Two armed men were hunting a mother and her little daughter through the frozen Arizona desert, and the only thing standing between them and death was a lonely cowboy who had sworn never to protect anyone again. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. They said if he opened his door, he would lose his life. They said the woman was already sold. They said the child would not survive the night. But when the knock came at midnight, and a trembling woman whispered, "Please, I'll give you anything if you save my daughter," the cowboy made a choice that would turn his quiet cabin into a battlefield and change 3 broken lives forever. Before the sun slips behind the ridge and the door opens to a stranger's fate, remember this: sometimes the quietest homes hold the deepest turning points. Sometimes mercy arrives before danger, and sometimes one night can change 3 lives forever. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like the video and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. The sun was sinking low behind the ridge when Jonah Reich rode into the yard, the last pale light of day spreading across the dry valley in a calm, fading glow. His horse moved slow and tired, breath rising white in the cooling air, and Jonah felt the familiar ache settle deep into his shoulders from carrying traps since morning. All afternoon he had expected the usual silence, the kind of stillness that always waited for him after long days alone. But something in the dirt near the cabin door stopped him before he reached the hitch rail. There were tracks, light, uneven, desperate. Jonah stayed in the saddle another moment, forcing his heartbeat to slow. The prints were not a man's, too narrow, too scattered, like someone stumbling, catching themselves, barely staying upright. A smaller set followed close behind, tiny steps pressed shallow into the dust. He saw where knees had sunk into the ground, one deeper than the other, as if someone had lowered themselves carefully and stayed there for a while. Jonah swung down from the horse, boots landing quiet. He held the reins, loose as he crouched, and ran too, fingers along the edge of one footprint. The shape told him enough. A worn woman, a small child, exhausted, likely starving. Something heavy pulled at his chest, not fear. Concern, thick and steady, slowing his breath. The cabin door stood open just a crack, enough to catch the edge of his eye. That door never stayed open unless he left it that way, and Jonah always checked it twice before riding out. His hand found the butt of his holstered revolver on instinct. Though he didn't draw it, not yet. He took one slow step, then another, crossing the threshold into the dim room. The last light slipped across the floorboards, the stove holding only faint orange coals. At first he saw nothing, then his eyes adjusted. A woman stood near the far wall, her back half turned, clutching a child tight against her chest. Her dress was torn, her shoulders shaking with exhaustion. She turned at the sound of his boot, and Jonah caught the look in her eyes. Fear built over days, maybe weeks, held back only by the small weight she protected. He froze, not from fear, but so she wouldn't. The woman swallowed, her throat trembling. When she spoke, her voice came thin and rough. "Please, my daughter. She needs food." Her eyes never left him. Her arms tightened around the girl whose head lay limp against her shoulder. The child looked no older than 4. Jonah saw how shallow her breathing was, how close to fading she seemed. The woman shifted her feet to balance the weight, unsteady but determined. "I can offer myself," she whispered, "if you feed her." Something heavy settled inside Jonah, sharp and cold, the realization of how desperate she had become. He didn't step forward. He didn't reach for her. He only lifted one hand, palm open, slow, to show he meant no harm. "No," he said quietly. "Not that. Your girl eats. Both of you eat. That's all." Confusion flickered across her face, then disbelief. Fear loosened just enough for her to take a steadier breath. Jonah moved to the table and placed what food he had. Bread, a tin bowl of stew, half a boiled potato. The smell filled the room. The child stirred weakly, sensing warmth or food or both. "You can sit," Jonah said. "Let her eat." The woman hesitated, her mind racing, her body angled to shield the child. Jonah stepped back toward the door, giving her space, letting her see every movement. Finally, she lowered herself into the chair, knees nearly buckling as she placed the girl on her lap. Her hands shook so badly she steadied herself twice before lifting a spoon. The child opened her mouth slowly, a faint sound escaping her throat. Not quite a cry, not quite relief. Watching them, Jonah felt something shift inside him. He remembered the silence after his wife died, the long years of nothing but wind and creaking boards. He leaned against the doorframe, arms loose, not threatening. He didn't ask questions. He let them breathe. When the bowl was nearly empty, he spoke again. "You'll take the bed tonight. I'll sleep by the stove. It's warmer there anyway." The woman nodded, still unsure, but she didn't refuse. Jonah added logs to the stove, warming the room. As the fire caught, he listened to the sound of her breathing steady, inch by inch. He hadn't expected company. He hadn't expected to feel anything at all. But tonight, someone else lived under his roof. The fire burned low and steady as Jonah sat near it, eyes open, listening to the soft breaths from the bed. The woman sat stiff, her daughter cradled tight, waiting for danger that didn't come. "You can sleep," Jonah said quietly. "Door's locked. No one's coming in." She studied him in the dim light. "Why are you helping us? Your girl needs warmth and rest." "That's enough. Then don't help for nothing," she whispered. "You won't hear that from me." At last she lay down, curled around her daughter, guarding her even in sleep. Jonah lay on the floor, staring at the beams, listening to fire and breath and small movements, the cabin no longer empty. Later she asked his name. "Jonah Reich." "Maya," she said. "My daughter is Ona. Rest, Maya. You're safe tonight." Dawn came slow and pale. Jonah rose quietly and found them still sleeping, the child's face softer now. He fetched water, lit the stove, moved through the morning with careful routine. When Maya woke, fear faded faster. "This time, there's water if you want to wash. I'll step outside." When she emerged with damp hair and Jonah's blanket around her shoulders, he saw bruises dark on her wrists. "She hasn't eaten in days," she said. "I'll make something warm." Inside, oats simmered, quiet comfort filling the room. Ona ate eagerly, strength returning bit by bit. "You fixed the door," Maya noticed. "Didn't want cold coming in?" She understood more than he said. "Thank you, Jonah." The cabin felt different now. Not full, but no longer empty. The day settled into work. Wood split, kindling gathered, sweeping slow and careful. Maya mended her dress with trembling fingers. "You worked with thread before?" "In my village. It felt useful." "It still is." Later, when their eyes met across the yard, something new passed between them. Not fear, not need, but trust beginning to breathe. By evening, the stove glowed bright, the cabin warm and lived in. "You don't trouble me," Jonah said. "You need a place. This is it." Maya swallowed hard. "Thank you." The trust between them grew another quiet inch. Morning frost came again, and this time Maya greeted him without flinching. "I slept," she said. "Really slept. Good. When—" She said she hadn't woken afraid for the first time in years. Jonah didn't ask more. He let safety speak for itself. When Ona stood wobbling by the bed and reached for him, Jonah lifted her carefully, and Maya watched the sight with wonder. She trusts you. She trusts gentleness. Days passed, snow falling soft outside, routine forming steady inside. They cooked together, worked together, shared silence that no longer hurt. When Maya cut her finger and Jonah cleaned it gently, she whispered she hadn't expected kindness. "You deserve gentleness," he answered. Her fingers touched his hand, then their palms met, slow and careful. Near the stove, she leaned into his touch, not afraid. Their kiss came soft and asking, not taking. When it ended, she said she finally felt safe. "You are," he told her. And for the first time in years, Jonah believed it too. The morning light crept through the narrow cabin window, pale and quiet, painting thin gold lines across the floorboards. Jonah woke before the fire had fully died, the chill of dawn pressing against his back. For a moment he forgot he was not alone. Then he heard the soft breathing. 2 sets, one deep and steady, one small and uneven, but stronger now than it had been the night before. He sat up slowly, careful not to wake them. Maya lay on her side on the bed, one arm wrapped protectively around Ona, whose cheek rested against her mother's chest. In sleep, the worry had finally loosened its grip on Maya's face. Jonah watched them longer than he meant to, something warm and unfamiliar stirring in his chest. He rose, pulled on his boots, and stoked the stove back to life. Outside, frost covered the ground in a thin white skin. The valley was silent, except for the distant cry of a hawk. He filled the kettle at the pump, his breath clouding in the cold, and set it to boil. When Maya woke, she did not reach for fear first this time. She sat up slowly, blinking, then looked toward Jonah by the stove. "You didn't leave," she said, almost surprised. "I said I wouldn't," he replied gently. She nodded, a small smile touching her lips. Ona stirred, rubbing her eyes, then looked at Jonah and lifted her arms without a word. He crossed the room and took her, light as a bundle of feathers, and she rested her head against his shoulder like she had known him all her life. While oats cooked, Maya wrapped herself in her patched shawl and moved to the table. Her steps were steadier now. "We were headed south," she said quietly, as if continuing a thought she had been holding back. "My husband was killed near Fort Verde, raiders or soldiers. I don't know anymore. After that, men thought a woman alone was something to claim." Jonah did not interrupt. He only listened. "We walked for weeks. Sometimes people helped. Sometimes they chased us away. Last night, when I saw your cabin, I thought—" Her voice faltered. "I thought I would have to sell what little dignity I'd left to keep my daughter alive." Jonah set the bowls down in front of them. "You won't have to do that here." She met his eyes. "Why?" He thought of his empty years, the silence that had nearly hollowed him out. "Because no one should be cornered into choosing between their child and their soul." Tears filled her eyes, but this time they did not fall. She simply bowed her head and whispered, "Thank you." After breakfast, Jonah showed her the small creek behind the cabin and where he trapped rabbits in winter. Ona followed, laughing when the frost crunched beneath her shoes. The sound startled Jonah. He could not remember the last time laughter had lived near his home. By midday, snow began to fall, slow and gentle. Maya helped mend a tear in Jonah's coat, her fingers quick and skilled. Their shoulders brushed now and then, neither pulling away. That evening, as the storm thickened outside, Jonah brought down an extra quilt. "You can have the bed again," he said. "And you?" she asked. "I'm fine by the stove." She hesitated, then shook her head. "The bed is big enough. We don't have to, but you shouldn't freeze on the floor." He studied her face, searching for fear. There was none, only trust, careful but real. "All right," he said softly. They lay on opposite sides at first, a respectful space between them. Ona slept curled in the middle, warm and safe. The fire crackled low. In the dark, Maya whispered, "Jonah, yes, if you ever ask us to leave, I will understand." He turned toward her. "I won't." Silence followed, heavy with meaning. She shifted closer, just enough that her hand brushed his. After a moment, her fingers laced gently with his. For the first time in many winters, Jonah fell asleep not to emptiness, but to the quiet presence of a family forming around him. Morning brought brighter light and clear skies after the storm. Jonah went out early to check his traps. When he returned, he found Maya outside, teaching Ona how to sweep snow from the steps. "She wants to help," Maya said with a smile. "She's welcome," Jonah replied. Later that day, a rider passed on the distant ridge. Jonah stiffened, watching until the figure disappeared. Maya noticed. "Is something wrong?" "People don't come this way often," he said. "And sometimes when they do, it's not for good reasons." Fear flickered across her face, but she straightened. "If someone comes looking for us, I won't bring trouble to your door." "You already belong under this roof," he answered quietly. "That makes it my trouble, too." Her breath caught. That night, when the wind rose again, she leaned into him without asking. His arm went around her, slow and protective. No passion yet, only comfort. But it felt deeper than anything he had known in years. Outside, the valley slept under snow. Inside, 3 broken lives were slowly stitching themselves together. The wind howled through the valley that night, rattling the shutters like nervous fingers. Jonah woke before dawn, the kind of waking that came not from noise, but from instinct. For a long moment he lay still, listening. The fire had burned low. Ona slept between them, her small hand curled into the edge of Maya's shawl. Maya's breathing was steady, but Jonah sensed the shift in the air, that heavy feeling that came before trouble. Then he heard it. A horse. Not far. Slow steps, careful. Jonah eased himself out of bed without waking either of them. He slipped into his boots and took the rifle from its peg by the door. He did not load it yet. He only held it, feeling its weight, grounding himself. The sound came again. Hooves stopping. Leather creaking. Someone was outside. He moved to the window and lifted the corner of the curtain just enough to look. In the grey light of early morning, he saw a man dismounting near the fence. Then another shape behind him. 2 riders, both armed. His jaw tightened. He crossed back to the bed and gently touched Maya's shoulder. "Maya, wake up quietly." Her eyes opened at once, fear instantly awake. "What is it?" "Men outside. Take Ona and go behind the stove. Don't make a sound." She did not argue. She gathered her daughter, wrapped the quilt around her, and moved where he pointed. Crouching low in the shadows, a knock came hard and sudden, shaking the door. "Open up!" a rough voice called. "We know you're in there." Jonah stood by the door, rifle in hand, but lowered. "State your business." The door handle rattled. "We're looking for a woman and a child. Passed through this area yesterday. Dark hair, pretty enough to remember." Maya went pale behind the stove. Jonah's voice stayed calm. "No one's been here but me." A laugh came from outside. "Don't lie, old man. We saw smoke last night. You're not the only soul breathing in that cabin." Jonah's grip tightened on the rifle. He stepped closer to the door. "You got no right here. This is private land." There was a pause. Then the door was kicked hard, the frame groaning but holding. "Last chance," the man said. "Hand over the woman and we walk away." Silence filled the cabin, thick and dangerous. Jonah answered quietly, "You're not taking anyone." The door burst inward. The first man lunged through, knife in hand. Jonah swung the rifle like a club, catching him across the jaw. The man crashed into the table, splintering a leg. The second man fired a shot from outside. The bullet tore through the doorframe, showering wood chips across the room. Maya screamed and covered Ona. Jonah fired once through the open doorway. The sound cracked the morning. A cry followed, then the thud of a body hitting snow. The man inside tried to rise. Jonah struck him again, harder this time, until he lay still, groaning. Jonah dragged him outside by the collar. The second rider lay wounded near his horse, clutching his leg, blood dark against the white ground. "Get on your horse," Jonah growled, rifle aimed steady. "Both of you, and ride." "You'll regret this," the wounded man hissed. "Not today," Jonah said. He watched them mount clumsily and disappear down the ridge, leaving red tracks behind them in the snow. Only when they were gone did Jonah's hands begin to shake. He went back inside. Maya was still crouched behind the stove, holding Ona so tight the child whimpered. "It's over," Jonah said softly. Maya rose on unsteady legs and crossed the room in 3 quick steps. She threw her arms around him, shaking. "They were looking for us," she whispered. "They sold my husband's wagon. When I escaped, they followed." He held her, feeling her heart racing against his chest. "They won't come back." That night, they barred the door and kept the rifle close. Sleep came in pieces, broken by wind and memory. In the days that followed, Jonah reinforced the door, fixed the shutters, and moved traps closer to the cabin. Maya learned where the rifle hung and how to load it, though she prayed she would never need to. Fear lingered, but something stronger grew beside it. Trust. One evening, as the sun burned red behind the hills, Maya stood beside Jonah on the porch. "You risked your life for us," she said. "For family," he answered. She turned to him slowly. "Are we family now?" He looked at Ona, chasing snowflakes in the yard, then back at Maya. "If you'll have it that way." Tears filled her eyes. She nodded. That night when they lay together, there was no longer distance between them. Their closeness was gentle, healing, born not of hunger but of safety and choice. And somewhere far away, 2 wounded men carried the memory of a quiet cabin where mercy had turned into something dangerous. The valley did not forget blood easily. 3 mornings after the riders fled, Jonah stood at the edge of the ridge with his rifle resting across his arm, scanning the pale distance. The snow had begun to melt, leaving dark scars of mud where hooves had cut through. He knew men like those did not simply vanish. They went to louder places, gathered help, and came back meaner. Behind him, smoke rose from the cabin chimney. Maya was inside baking the last of the flour into flat bread. Ona sat on the floor, lining up pebbles and humming to herself, unaware of how close danger still lingered. Jonah felt it in his bones. That afternoon a stranger came. Not riding hard, not hiding. Just one man alone, leading a tired horse down the trail like someone with nowhere left to go. Jonah met him halfway to the fence. The man raised both hands at once. "Easy, I'm not trouble." "You're on my land," Jonah said. "Name's Caleb Finch," the man replied. "I heard about a shooting up on the ridge 2 days ago. 2 fellows limped into Red Hollow half dead, telling a story about a trapper who stole their woman and tried to kill them." Jonah's jaw tightened. "That's not how it happened." "I figured," Caleb said calmly. "Those 2 are known hunters of broken people. They sell women south of the border. Been doing it for years." Jonah's blood ran cold. "They'll come back," Caleb went on. "Not just them. The man they work for. Silas Boone." The name hit like a hammer. Jonah knew it. Everyone did. Boone ran half the illegal trade between Arizona and Sonora. If Boone wanted Maya, the valley would not hide her forever. Maya had come to the porch, listening. "Then what do we do?" she asked, her voice steady but pale. Caleb looked at her kindly. "You disappear. Tonight, if you're smart. Head east, Fort Whipple. There are people there who protect women like you." Jonah felt the ground tilt beneath him. "Run! Leave the cabin, the land. The only place that had ever felt like home." Maya turned to Jonah, eyes full of fear and apology. "I never meant to bring this to you." "You didn't," he said quickly. But the choice still stood between them. That night they packed in silence. A sack of food, Jonah's spare coat, the little wooden horse he carved for Ona that afternoon, pressing it into her hands like a promise. When the moon rose, they saddled Jonah's best horse and tied a small bundle behind the saddle. Caleb would guide them as far as the river. Before leaving, Maya stood in the doorway and looked back at the cabin, the stove, the table, the bed where safety had found her for the first time in years. "I wanted this to be our life," she whispered. Jonah took her face gently in his hands. "It still can be, just somewhere else." They had gone less than a mile when the night exploded. A gunshot cracked from the ridge. Jonah shoved Maya and Ona behind a boulder as bullets tore through brush and bark. Torches flared to life along the hill. 6 men. Silas Boone himself rode forward, tall in the saddle, a dark coat hanging like a shadow around him. "There she is," Boone called, smiling. "The little ghost who slipped my cage." Jonah rose slowly, rifle in hand. "You turn around," Jonah said, voice hard as iron, "or you die on this mountain." Boone laughed. "You're one man." Jonah fired. The first shot took a rider from his horse. Chaos burst open. Horses screamed. Men scattered. Caleb dragged Maya and Ona toward the trees. "Run!" Jonah moved like a storm, firing, reloading, using rock and shadow as cover. One man fell, then another. But there were too many. A bullet tore through Jonah's shoulder. He staggered, but stayed standing, teeth clenched against the pain. Boone rode closer, raising his pistol. "Should have sold her when you had the chance," Boone sneered. Before he could fire, Maya stepped from behind the tree. "No," she cried. The distraction was enough. Jonah fired one last time. Boone fell backward from his horse, dead before he hit the ground. Silence crashed down as suddenly as the gunfire had begun. The remaining men fled into the dark, leaving their dead behind. Jonah dropped to his knees, blood soaking his coat. Maya ran to him, sobbing, pressing her hands to his wound. "Don't leave me, please." "I'm still here," he whispered, though the world was already fading. They did not go east. They went back. Caleb helped them to the cabin before dawn. Jonah drifted in and out of fever for days. Maya never left his side, feeding him water, cooling his skin, whispering promises he could barely hear. On the 5th morning, Jonah finally opened his eyes clear and strong. Maya was asleep with her head on the edge of the bed, Ona curled beside her. Jonah smiled weakly. They were alive. Boone was dead, and the valley at last was quiet.